going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. You know who it is by now,
Jimothy.
So ladies and gents, we are back with another video, and yes, it is me talking once again, mainly because I'm concerned about the state of rogue decks today, ladies and gents. And I think it's a bit of a weird one, especially with the direction that the game's been going in most recently. I feel like rogue decks are getting further and further apart from some of the meta decks. So I just want to discuss a few of the issues, some potential fixes, and just like talk about rogue decks going forward. So first and foremost, rogue decks, ladies and gents, all my days, they've been semi pushed out of the meta, mainly because of the strength of meta decks nowadays and the prevalence of one card combos. Now, I've always thought about this. I feel like at the moment we're at a bit of a critical mass with regards to printing cards, because the new cards aren't going to get picked up or shown any interest unless they supersede the cards that preceded before them, which is a little bit annoying, because basically what that states is power creep. And we've seen it time and time again. There's been archetypes that have been printed, Ragnarika being an example that I've been testing. I think that's a solid deck. It's not the best deck because it doesn't do what the best decks do, which is effectively kind of circumvent certain game mechanics and certain rules that Konami have set themselves. So these quote-unquote tier 2 rogue decks don't have one card combos for the most part, can be interrupted, have a unique gameplay or a unique strategy, but it's very easily combated just because meta decks can do the things that those rogue decks can't do. So meta decks typically have one card combos that have room for a lot of non-engine. They've got one card that can facilitate a range of different plays, which means you need to burn a specific interaction on them, or you could potentially be burning 2 or 3 types of interaction on them if you're lucky enough to draw that kind of hand. And it just means that, like Snake Eye for example, against most other decks, which is a little bit frustrating, makes other decks look like tier 2 or rogue because it can do so much. And it's unfortunate to say that in the next like couple of weeks or so we're gonna get Infinite Forbidden, and that's just gonna basically put the Fiendsmith stuff out there for everybody to go and enjoy. Now, as Yu-Gi-Oh players, I feel like we're a little bit fickle, because we complain about these very powerful decks, but yet when a new archetype or a new broken archetype gets printed, everybody's like, let's say everybody, but there are a lot of people out there that are kind of like testing it, kind of like getting their reps in, so to speak, just to be able to kind of like hit the ground running with the strategy that's just come out. But this strategy just promotes degeneracy, in my opinion. I could potentially be wrong, but I feel like you can do so much with that deck, or so much with that engine, and still be able to do other things without it like locking you into anything, which effectively pushes the rogue decks out. And yes, rogue decks can also utilize this engine, but not to the greatest degree of some of those meta decks, which then makes those rogue strategies a little bit less playable. And typically rogue strategies kind of like have a little bit more restrictions on them, which then makes them rogue, because these meta decks don't. They just get to just do whatever they want with the card pool, whereas these rogue strategies just cards. So what can we do? What can we do to sort this out, ladies and gents? And I don't know. I don't feel like, unless Konami goes a very specific route to address some of these rogue decks and make them more viable, I don't know if it's ever going to change. Because rogue decks are rogue for a reason. They have to present a unique gameplay, and I've been testing Ashend for example. Now Ashend has a few stipulations on some of its cards which lock you into pyro monsters from the extra deck only for the rest of the turn after you've resolved said card, which I think is a fair and balanced addition, because if you didn't have that restriction, you'd just be able to go off. But some meta strategies just don't have this, and I feel like they are somewhat needed, especially with the power of them. Snake Eye for example, maybe they need to be locked into like fires only and just remain on fires from the extra deck, or even the main deck, so to speak, depending on however you want to look at it, after they've resolved a few effects, just to be able to make sure that it's balanced. At the moment there's just absolutely no restrictions on them, and then the restrictions are placed on rogue decks, which inherently quote unquote make those rogue decks bad. I took a few decks to, I took Sprite, which you can see in some of the gameplay in the background, to locals, and obviously Sprite's a strong deck, I'm not gonna lie, ladies and gents. Very solid deck, especially with the introduction of like Swap Frog and the Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier. Sprite can do some nice things, but there are a few restrictions on Sprite. You do get locked into link, rank and level 2s at some point in the combo, especially if you start off with Sprite starter. You can only really summon those, which is a little bit of a hindrance. It's not so much of a problem, but it's a restriction that's there, and I feel like some of these more meta strategies need some of these type of restrictions just to put a limit on how much they can do. Now, there's a few Snake Eye Fiendsmith combos that are out there at the moment, and I think it's absolutely insane that Snake Eye now can facilitate Fiendsmith combos with just literally no issues whatsoever. They've got the full suite of the Fiendsmith cards, full suite of all the Snake Eye and Wanted cards as it stands. Obviously they're not released yet, but as it stands, and they can literally just do whatever they need to do to facilitate whatever type of board. And the Fiendsmith actually promote a form of omni negation, a little bit like, I think it's like Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, where it targets cards and field and it can negate them. So that in combination with Appaloosa, which is super easy to make in Snake Eye, is just going to promote that kind of board that the sins of like Baron de Fleur and Borrelode Savage Dragon got banned for, which is a little bit annoying in a sense. But it's more annoying that there's players out there that like playing Ragnarok, that like playing trap tricks, that like playing some off-key strategy like Ascend, for example, that just will not get a chance. And the reason I say this is because I went to locals, and literally even your most casual of players is actually playing some form of a strongish deck. I've seen a few Snake Eye decks. I haven't really seen people really go out on the limb to play their own deck, unless they've just been playing it for a while and they just don't know any better. But it just seems like even at locals, when you go for a little bit more of a casual experience, you're just getting stomped by meta decks, and it just seems a little bit wild that we're trending in a direction where like it's just the norm to have a very, very strong meta deck at locals, at regionals, just everywhere. And it just, I don't know, it's just something that I thought about, and I feel like it kills the lifeblood of the game, which is some of those more rogue strategies, which are a little bit more of a spectacle to watch, are just kind of slowly like petering out because they just can't compete, and I would very much like them to compete. But that's just my thoughts, ladies and gents. Again, I never script my videos. I always just speak it how it is. Whatever comes into my head, I just get it out there. And at times, it means that I miss a few things. So if there's anything that you wanted to add to this discussion, anything that you feel like is important with regards to like the state of rogue decks, definitely get at me in that comment section below. And as always, we find ourselves at the end of another video. If you did like this content, you know what to do by now. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, all of that beautiful good stuff, and I will definitely see you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.